What's up YouTube, I'm JennieYGO and today I'm bringing you my Fluffal deck profile for November 2021. I've been doing really well with this deck recently. At the last locals I went to, I went 3-0, undefeated, didn't even drop a game. I was playing against Dragon Link, Virtual World, and Tri-Brigade, and the locals previous to that I went 3-1, beating Medulce, Pendulum, and Tri-Brigade, and I lost Game 3 to Dragon Link because I bricked on too many edgems, which is a really funny way to go considering we only play 6 edgems in the deck. But, you know, what can you do sometimes? Them's the bricks. This deck is really underrated, in my opinion, because it's just so strong and really surprisingly resilient to hand traps. And it's pretty consistent as well, and it can go first or second, which is something a lot of decks, you know, can't do. And overall, I just wanted to share my deck profile that's been doing so well. So, we'll start with the main deck. For the monsters, we'll start with 3 Fluffal Dog. This is the boy, the dog. So what he does is when he's summoned from hand, he gets to add a Fluffal or Edgem Sabers from your deck to your hand. This is pretty good, however usually this is hand trap bait. People who don't know the deck really well will see something like this and go, yeah, this will be impermed, or yeah, this should be ashed. And really this isn't really a choke point to the deck if this gets ashed or impermed. Maybe if you open like really poorly. But overall he's kind of like hand trap bait, but he's still pretty good. He's used in 2 of our combos and that I'll be going into, and he's just a really strong card overall. However, when I do go second, I do side out one of the dogs because you don't need 3 dogs going second, in my opinion. So that's dog. Next we have the true best Fluffal monster, which is 3 Fluffal Penguin. This is the GOAT, except he's a penguin. So its effect on field is that it can summon a Fluffal monster from your hand. This is once while on the field. It's like a wind-up monster. So usually your game plan is to reborn this or use multiple copies of this. Reborning it off of like Cross Sheep or using multiple copies, such as summoning one from hand with Fright for Repair. It's a really strong card, and usually you'll be using it to go into rank 4 plays like Bahamut Shark, Abyss Dweller, Tornado Dragon, whatever you need. It also has an effect when used as fusion material for a Fight for monster to draw 2 cards and discard 1, which is good for 2 reasons. 1, it digs through your deck and discards a card, which is really good for cards like Eldritch, Edgem Chain, and Toy Vendor. Yeah, you heard that right, we're playing Eldritch. It's also good because it chain blocks stuff like Crew Whale if you really need to pop a card on the field. So overall, it's the best card in the deck, in my opinion. Next, we have 3 Fluffal Bear. I was only running 2 of this until I started playing Eldritch. And then I played 3 Eldritch and I was like, okay, I really want to see Toy Vendor. So what this card does is that it sends itself to the graveyard to set a Toy Vendor directly from your deck. This can't be ashed. Please stop trying to ash my bear. It can't be ashed. It doesn't add, it sets. It has an effect on field to tribute itself to add a poly from your grave. It doesn't come up too often, however it can come up sometimes if you really need that poly in hand to fusion summon and then OTK. And overall it's a really good card to have at 3. Next, I play 2 Dolphin. This is the only 2 of Fluffal in the deck. The reason I play 2 Dolphin is that 1 is going to be used in your combo with Penguin to make Bahamut Shark and set a Toy Vendor and send wings on the first turn. And I think this is really good for follow-up, especially when mixed with Eldritch, because it gets to reset a Vendor, and then your Eldritch will be able to trigger in graveyard, sending the Toy Vendor to summon itself, which is really good for OTKs. I also like the second copy because of its second effect, which is when it's used as fusion material to shuffle back a poly or fusion spell, which is really good if you, let's say, run out of polys in the main deck and you have a Fright for Patchwork in your hand. You fuse using Dolphin, and then Dolphin puts back a poly, and then you can activate Patchwork and then add that poly plus an Edgem. So that's really strong in my opinion, and that's why I play 2 of it. It's also good to open this with Penguin so you can make your Bahamut Shark easier, but that's just like an added plus. For the 1 of Fluffals, I have 1 Octopus, 1 Sheep, and 1 Wings. So Octopus is pretty good. When it's summoned, it gets to add an Edgem or Fluffal monster from your graveyard. Good for either recovery or setting up for combos on your opponent's turn. So this can add back something like Edgem Scythe, and Edgem Scythe can fuse on the opponent's turn to summon something like Crew Whale, which is pretty good. It also has an effect when it uses fusion material to put back 2 banished monsters, which is good for putting back wings and can also come up in niche situations where your opponent Cosmic Cyclones an artifact Scythe. And if you keep Dagda on field, you can pop the Dagda with the Crew Whale, and if you use the Octopus as material, put back the Scythe into the grave, And then when on a new chain, Dagda will activate, reviving the artifact Scythe, which is pretty good. Next, Fluffal Sheep. If you control a Fluffal, you get to summon this guy from your hand. This doesn't. This can't be Apollosid, which is something that does come up because its effect to summon itself doesn't activate. You know, like a lot of extenders, they may activate like, oh, if you control this card, you can summon this card from your hand, but they'll have a colon. This doesn't have a colon, so it can just summon itself from hand. This summon is, by the way, not once per turn, so you can add it back off of Octopus if you want, and then summon the sheep again. And it has another effect to bounce a Fluffal monster to your hand as cost, and then it revives an Edge Imp or summons one from your hand. This is part of 2 of your combos, one of them to OTK and one of them to set up Scythe Lock. So it's a pretty good card. However, you only really want one. You don't really want to be opening multiple sheep in your hand. Next, we have Fluffal Wings. If it's in your grave and you control Toy Vendor, you can banish it plus a Fluffal to draw, send a Toy Vendor, draw another card. This is absolutely insane. You're literally getting to draw 2 and then add off a vendor. So that's 3 cards added to your hand immediately off of this card and banishing a Fluffal. And you don't even really care about banishing because 1, Octopus can put them back if you really need them back. And 2, you just don't really care in this deck. You're usually banishing something like a Fluffal Bear, which, you know, you don't really need because you're already playing 3 of it. This is what you're usually sending off of Dolphin, since Dolphin can send a Fluffal or Edge Imp Sabers from the deck to the grave to set a Toy Vendor. And it's just a really good card overall. I wouldn't play more than 1. I've seen some lists run 2. However, I don't really want to brick on this card. If you really need to, you can search it off Dog, Foolish Burial Goods for Toy Vendor, etc. You know, you don't really need to play more than 1. So that's for the Fluffals. Next, the Edge Imps. We play 3 Edge Imp Chain. This card's pretty good. It's your best Edge Imp by a mile. When it's sent to the graveyard from the hand or field, you get to add a Frightful card from your deck to your hand, which is good because Patrick is really good and so is Fusion. So, you know, you're getting to add, you know, one of those 2 really good cards. It also has an effect when it declares an attack to add Edge Imp Chain, but you don't care about that effect because you can only use 1 effect of Edge Imp Chain per turn, so you don't want to be wasting it on adding another Edge Imp Chain when it declares an attack. So, yep, that's Edge Imp Chain, best Edge Imp. Next, we have 2 Edge Imp Scythe. This is not only good for going first to set up your first turn board, but also good for going second to break your opponent's board while they're playing as a good hand trap. At the locals recently when I was playing against Tri Brigade, they normal summoned Rescue Cat. I activated Edge Imp Scythe, fusion summoned Crew Whale, popped the cat, and then I just OTK'd because they had no other follow-up. Its effect is during the opponent's main phase, you get to fusion summon using cards from your hand or field as material to summon a Frightful monster, and it also has a Salamangreat Balings-like effect, where it can banish itself to protect a Frightful monster from being destroyed by a card effect or by battle. So it's a really strong card for both those reasons, and it's just a really good to have in the deck. The reason I don't play 3 is you don't want to break on Edge Imps, however I will side in the 3rd one if I'm going second. Finally, for the Edge Imps, we have 1 Edge Imp Sabers. This card, you may know it from, I guess, Phantom Knights used to run it. If it's in the graveyard, you can place 1 card on top of your deck and summon it from the grave in defense position. This is pretty good for extending. It's also good because you can put a Fluffal on top of your deck, activate Toy Vendor, discard a card, draw a card. Oh, it's a Fluffal! I get to summon a monster from my hand, which is really strong. You only play 1 of this, however, because it's searchable off of, like, everything, so you don't need to play more than 1. For the Spicy Boy! Oh man, look at him with his high heels. We've got Eldritch the Golden Lord. Its effect in hand is to send it plus a spell or trap to the graveyard, target card on the field, send it to the graveyard. You don't really care about that effect. What you care about more is its graveyard effect. While it's in the graveyard, you can send a spell or trap card you control to the graveyard, add it to your hand, and then summon a zombie, and that zombie cannot be destroyed by card effects, and it gains 1,000 attack and defense. Now, you don't really care about that unless you're trying to OTK. However, going first, this is literally a free body with Toy Vendor. You discard it off a Toy Vendor, you send the Toy Vendor, and then you just get the free body, plus you get the Toy Vendor activation. So you're getting a search, plus a body on board to be used as link material, and he's also good for trying to OTK on the follow-up. So he's just a really strong card for the deck, and I highly advise playing at least 2 of it. And yeah, so it's just a really good card to have. For the only hand trap we're playing besides Edge Imp Scythe, we have 3 Gamma and the 1 Driver. This is good because it protects a lot of your plays. It protects Foolish Bear Goods, Fender, Fright for Patchwork, which is really important. You can even protect a Eldritch trying to reborn itself by sending a toy vendor. If they try and ghost spell you, you can chain Gamma, and it's just a really strong card because you just get 2 free bodies on board on your turn, and on the opponent's turn, even if you're going second. This is a really strong hand trap because not only does it negate a monster effect, it destroys that monster, which is really important. So overall, just a really strong hand trap, and I'm really glad that it works well with the deck, you know, that it's been working well, because this deck, you know, I thought it was kind of lacking on hand traps because you can't really play many, but then I found Gamma, and Gamma just works and just synergizes with the deck so well. For the final monster, I should say, we're playing Artifact Scythe. This is part of your end board. Cruel Whale Pop Artifact Scythe was the original DPE Pop Scythe. DPE copied us. Bro, I want my credit. Its effect, if you don't know what Artifact Scythe does, when it's destroyed, it gets to summon itself from the graveyard on the opponent's turn. And when it's summoned, you just get to lock your opponent out of the extra deck. They can't summon from the extra deck. That's amazingly strong in this in this current format of Yu-Gi-Oh! Unless you're playing against Flunderies, then it's not so good. So yeah, that does it for the monsters. We'll go on to the spells next. For the spells, we're playing 3 Toy Vendor. This is the heart and soul of the deck. God, I love this card. So once per turn, you can discard a card and draw a card. If it's a Fluffal, you reveal the card. If it's a Fluffal, you get to summon any monster from your hand. If it's not, it goes to the graveyard. This is good for 2 reasons. 1, if it's a Fluffal, yay, you get to extend and you don't have to use your normal summon. Even if it's not, you play so many cards that, you know, want to be discarded. For example, Fright for Repair, Edgem Chain, Eldritch the Golden Lord. You know, it's just like, you don't even care sometimes if you draw nothing off of Toy Vendor. Its other effect is that if it's sent to the graveyard from anywhere, you get to add a Fluffal or Edgem Sabers. Note that this isn't a hard once per turn or even a once per turn. You just get to add. I've once added off of Toy Vendor's second effect 4 times in 1 turn. It's just a really good card, and you get to loop it a lot in this deck, and it's just a really, really good card. It's the heart and soul of this deck, like I said. It's just really good. As I said, we're playing Foolish Burial Goods to help with sending Toy Vendor. This is basically like a Rhoda but for Fluffals, so pretty good. I'm only running 2 poly. Now, the reason for only running 2 poly is because you just don't need the third. Like, the third one is good for extending if you get hand trapped. Like, let's say you normal summon Penguin, try to activate its effect, you get Imperm. It's like, oh, well, at least I have a poly plus an Edgem to extend, you know? But the thing is, you just don't need to brick on poly. You don't want to brick on poly. And you just don't need the third one. If you, like, run out of polys, you have Fluffal Bear, you have Fluffal Dolphin, you have Fright for Fusion if you really need to fuse. So I just don't think the third one is necessary. Next, we're playing 3 Fright for Patchwork. Another reason to only be running 2 poly. This is searchable with Chain, this searches poly, plus an Edgem. So you're already playing 8 copies of poly, essentially. Its effects, like I said, add an Edgem plus a poly. This is usually, if somebody knows Fluffals, this is usually what they're waiting for to hold their Ash. They'll usually hold it for something like Fright for Patchwork, and if they don't, they'll do it on like Fluffal Dog, in which case you can just activate this and, keep going. This is literally just a +1, it's like Pot of Greed, +1, no drawbacks, add 2 cards from deck to hand. For the second Edgem Chain target, and usually the one you'll be going for if you've already activated Patchwork, it's Fright for Fusion. This card lets you fusion summon a Fright for monster by banishing materials from field or grave. This is really good for both following up and OTKing, and even if you get Nibiru, you can, summon a Fright for monster off of Fright for Fusion. If you have another monster in hand, go into Cross Sheep, summon a monster to the zone Cross Sheep points to, trigger Cross Sheep, because it points to a fusion. I'm going into convoluted things. It's just really strong for extending, really, and it's a really good card. For the last Fright for card, we have Fright for Repair. Now, its effect on field is to return a Fright for monster from your graveyard to your extra deck, and then you get to reborn a Fluffal monster. This is pretty good, However, usually you care more about its second effect while it's in the graveyard, because you'll be sending this off of Cruel's second effect to send a Frightful card, which is banish it to summon a Fluffal or Edge Imp from your hand, which is just really good for extending, and it's really solid. Really glad that we have a good target to send off Cruel, and they didn't just give us some random boost effect. Finally, for the spells, we have Call by the Grave to stop hand traps. This is a 41 card deck. Now for the extra deck. For the fusions, we're playing 1 Fright for Kraken, 1 Fright for Tiger, 1 Fright for Sabretooth, and 3 Fright for Cruel. Now, let's get into these. So, the reason I run 3 Cruel is because, well, for starters, its materials are generic. It's an Edge Imp plus a Fluffal monster. If it's Fusion Summoned, you get to pop a card on both players' fields. This doesn't target, which is really good for cards that may want to dodge effects like Incredible Ecclesia, Incredible Ecclesia, which tributes itself as a quick effect to summon a Sword Soul. So you can, like, you know, summon Cruel on the opponent's turn. It's like, okay, Cruel effect, it's like, oh, well, do I use the Ecclesia effect now, or do I, or do I wait? And even if they do use the Ecclesia effect, you can just pop whatever they summon and they don't get the effect. Its second effect is to target a fusion monster. That's any fusion monster, not just itself. And then you send a Frightful card from your deck or extra deck, except itself. And then you get to boost that monster's attack by half its original attack. Both good for OTKing and extending when mixed with Frightful Repair. And it's overall just a really good card. The reason I play 3 is that 1 is going to be for your combo. So you're going to be summoning it to Cross-Shape Zone, sending a Frightful Repair, triggering Cross-Shape, stuff like that. The second one is for the opponent's turn, for your end board, where you pop a card on both players' fields, including an artifact Scythe on your field. And the third one is for follow-up. So if your opponent sets 2 and passes, you can just make Cruel, and you force out either one of the back row, or you just get to pop a back row for free. So that's why I run 3, and I've been really liking it. In fact, I wish I could run 4 of this card sometimes. However, I think 3 is enough. Next, we have Fright for Sabretooth. So, this guy's materials are a Fright for Fusion plus a Fluffal and a Edge Imp, and that's any amount of Fluffals and Edge Imps. When it's Fusion Summoned, you can target 1 Fright for monster in your graveyard, special summon it. So that basically means whatever Fright for monster you used on field to summon this guy, it just comes back, which is really good for OTKing. It also has an effect to boost all Fright for monsters by 400, which is really important when mixed with Kraken, because Kraken plus Sabretooth is exactly lethal, because Kraken can attack twice. And if it's Fusion Summon using 3 or more materials, it can't be destroyed by battle or card effects. This came up when I was playing against Grand Maju on Dueling Buck. They had Shoot Through my Disruption and then normal Grand Maju, and they dealt damage to me. However, it wasn't lethal, and they cleared my board. So I went, okay, Fright for Fusion, banish 3, including a Fright for my grave, and summon it, and then I just put it in defense, and they have to try and break that with no cards in hand and put them into a top deck position, and then I eventually drew the cards to OTK. So that's why I really like Sabretooth. It has multi-purpose, and usually the purpose is to OTK. Next, we have Fright for Tiger. This guy's materials are Edge Imp Sabers plus any amount of Fluffal monsters. When it's Fusion Summoned, you get to target cards on the field up to the number of cards used for its Fusion Summon and destroy them. This is really strong, and it's the reason that Necrofusion Fluffals was so popular for a long time, because you just, you'd set Necrofusion, which had consistency to it. You'd summon Lilith off of Fright for Meister, Lilith, search Necrofusion, whatever. It's really easy to get to Necrofusion in this deck if you wanted to. And then you just get to pop 5 cards on the opponent's turn with Necrofusion, because you'd banish your entire grave. You'd summon this guy, and then you wouldn't have to deal with anything on field. You play against back row, you just they set 5 pass. It's like, okay, I'm just gonna Tiger at end phase, destroy everything. It also has a secondary effect that it boosts all Fright for monsters on the field by 300 for each Fluffal and Fright for on the field. So immediately it boosts itself by 22 just by being on the field. So that's pretty good. You can only control 1 Tiger though. And some lists play 2. Those are usually the Necrofusion build. However, 1 works well if you're not using your Necrofusion, which we're not, so. Finally, Fright for Kraken. This is my favorite Fright for monster, and no, it's not because I have it in Secret Rare. It's only in Secret Rare, though. 1 Edge Imp plus 1 Fluffal, so it's generic, another reason why I like it. Once per turn, you get to target a monster on the field, send it to the graveyard, but then it can't attack directly for the rest of this turn. However, if you use it as fusion material for something like Sabretooth, and then use Sabretooth's effect to bring it back, it's treated as a new card and then can so attack directly. It also can attack twice during each battle phase, which is why Sabretooth plus Kraken is an OTK. Because you've got 2600 damage because of the Sabretooth boost, 2600, that's 52, and then 28, which is exact 8000. It also has an effect like Dante at the end of the battle phase. If it attacked, it switches itself to defense position, or it can if it switches itself to defense position. This does come up, and if you have the chance, please do switch it to defense position, because I've forgotten so many times, it's like actually fucking mattered, and it's like, you know, the most annoying shit when it's like, oh shit, I forgot Kraken effect, oh man, now I can't, you know, now they get to like kill me or something, you know, it's really annoying. So if you do use Kraken's effect, do remember, if you do attack with Kraken and you don't OTK, please do change it to defense position at the end of the battle phase. For the Xyzs, we play Totally Awesome, Bahamut Shark to summon the Totally Awesome, Abyss Dweller, and Tornado Dragon. So let's get into these guys. So Toad and Bahamut. You're usually making Bahamut with Dolphin plus Penguin, and it's really good because you can get that out before Nibiru. You can get that out before the 5th summon and keep playing. And for those who don't know what Toad does, it negates a spell or trap card by sending a Aqua monster from hand or field to the graveyard, which will usually be itself, and then it sets that card to your field, which is also really good for, you know, if your opponent tries to activate a good generic card, like let's say Imperm, you're like, okay, Toad effect to set that card, and now you have an Imperm. It also has an effect when it's sent to the graveyard, so, you know, when it sends itself to negate something, it gets to add back a water monster from your grave to your hand, which is really good for follow-up with, like, Dolphin or Penguin or Octopus, you know? So it's just a really, really good card. The reason I played this deck was because I was like, okay, I want a deck that can go first or second, maybe has something to do with fusioning, but also that can use this Totally Awesome that I pulled from a Megatin years ago when I started playing the game, and I was like, oh, Fluffals fills all of those roles. So, you know, that's why I played Toad Bahamut. Next, Tornado Dragon. This is both good as an extender for popping your opponent's cards and for popping Artifact Scythe if you don't have access to Edgem Scythe. It just pops a spell trap as a quick effect if you don't know what it does. This is good because you can pop Fender and then add something, or you can activate its effect targeting a Fender, trigger an artifact Dagda, set the Dagda, and add with Fender, and then pass, and then on the opponent's turn you get to Dagda. It's kind of like Pendulum Magicians in that sense, but usually that's only if you like open weird. So yeah, pretty good card. Finally, Abyss Dweller. This is one of those decks that actually cares about Dweller's secondary effect to boost all water monsters by 500 while it has a water monsters material, because both Dolphin and Penguin are water monsters, which means if you use this with like a dog, which is what you're usually doing, you can just, make a 2200 monster that negates the graveyard. That's what it does. Your opponent cannot use the graveyard this turn, which is really strong against everything. So, the Xyzs are pretty good. I wouldn't change anything in that department. For the links, we play Cross Sheep, Barricade Board Blocker, Artifact Dagda, Nightmare Phoenix, and Apollousa. So Cross Sheep's good. It's like the honorary Fluffal monster. I shouldn't say it's good, it's brilliant, it's amazing. So what it does is when a monster is special summoned to a Zone A fusion monster points to, because I'm just going to say that because it's a mouthful to read and I'm not going to go through all its effects. All you care about is that when a monster is summoned to a zone Cross Sheep points to, while it points to a fusion monster, you get to reborn a level 4 lure monster from your grave, which will usually be Fluffal Penguin, so you can use its effect again. The thing about this card that a lot of people don't realize is that this is when any monster is summoned to its own while it points to a fusion. So you can fusion summon Crew Whale, get to Cross Sheep, then activate something like Saber's Engrave summon, and then it triggers Cross Sheep to summon back, which is pretty good and good for making stuff like, Apollousa. Yep, Bow of the Goddess. So everyone knows what Apollousa does. You increase by its attack by 800 based on the materials used. So usually you'll have a 2400 Apollousa, but sometimes you'll have a 3200 one. And then when your opponent activates a monster effect once per chain, you can reduce this attack by 800 and then negate that effect. Doesn't destroy though, which would be broken if it did. But it just negates by reducing by 800. which is good for stopping Nibiru sometimes. Sometimes you get this out before the 5th summon, but you usually don't. And it's also just good, you know, for your end board, just to protect some of the rest of this stuff. So if like they maybe try and Ghost Spell on your artifact Scythe, you can go Apollosa and it still resolves. Next, Barricade Board Blocker. So this card does come up. It doesn't always come up, but you actually care about its effect to add back a continuous spell. Usually this is just a discard outlet, and to be fair, it's just a discard outlet in this deck. However, you can add back Fender at the end phase when you use this card. So what it does is, if it's link summoned, you can discard a card, and during the end phase of this turn, add a Cybers or field spell, or not a Cybers, add a continuous or field spell from your graveyard to your hand. And face-up spells you control cannot be destroyed by card effects, by your opponent's ones specifically. Mostly used as a discard outlet, but as I said, you can add back Toy Vendor at the end phase, which is kind of good for follow-up, but mostly it's just there to discard stuff like Edgem Chain and Toy Vendor in a dire situation. Next we have Nightmare Phoenix. I wish I had this during the YCS. You know, as you can see, I played during the YCS, and I played Fluffals, but it was the Necrofusion build. I wish I had this, because I opened against Eldritch, Edgem Chain, 4 spells, going second obviously, Edgem Chain, 4 spells, and a Fluffal dog, and I wasn't playing Phoenix at the time because I didn't have it. And what I could have done is a normal summon dog and special summon add sheep, special sheep, link into Phoenix, and pop. You know what they flipped with my 4 spells in hand? Imperial Order. I wasn't able to play because I just had no plays, and I just went, you know what, bro, you got this. You got this, my guy. I have no out to Imperial Order in my deck. So I just lost that game, which was so unfortunate. Next, Artifact Dagda. This is part of your end board. Its effect is that when a card or effect is activated on the field, you get to set a artifact card from your deck to the grave. Tech to the field, my god. And then it gets popped at the opponent's end phase. You don't really care about that. And if it's popped on the field, you get to reborn an artifact in your grave in defense position. So usually you're using this in one of your combos to set Scythe and then pop Scythe on the opponent's turn with Cruel Whale, as I've said multiple times, and then you get to Scythe lock the opponent. So now we'll get into some test hands. Alright, I'm gonna need to explain a few things after that last take. First of all, we're doing the combos first. I know I misspoke in the last take and I said we'll go into the test hands. However, ran into a bit of a slight issue. The file for the test hands, I'd recorded the whole thing, and the file for the test hands was so big that I wasn't able to export the video. And after I'd finished and edited it all, I wasn't able to export the video, so I am re-recording this on a new day. And I'm going to be doing the combos now, and then the test hands will be a separate video coming later this week. So I'm sorry to all those people who were excited for about 2 seconds when they thought they were about to get the test hands, but no, we're going to do the combos now, and you'll get test hands sometime this week. So for this combo, you're going to need Edgem Chain and Fluffal Dog, and this will Scythe lock the opponent, and I'll show you how. So first, you're going to normal summon your dog and activate its effect, and that'll add Fluffal Sheep. You'll then summon the sheep due to its own effect, and then use its second effect, bouncing the dog, in order to summon the chain from your hand. Sorry, I'm knocking that field sensor over. Then you'll link sheep and chain away in order to perform a link summon of Artifact Dagda. You'll then activate Edgem Chain's graveyard effect to add Patchwork. You'll then activate the Patchwork as Chainlink 1 and Dagda as Chainlink 2. Dagda will set the Scythe, and then Patchwork will add Scythe and Poly. Here is where you'll pass if you have no other place to make. And on the opponent's turn, when they do anything, place a card in the field, you'll activate Edgem Scythe, fusing with the Fluffal Dog in order to make Cruel Whale. You'll then pop the card on their field and the artifact Scythe you control, Scythe triggers in your graveyard, and then Scythe triggers on the field, locking your opponent out of the extra deck. For this next combo, this is to OTK your opponent. You're going to need Fluffal Dog and Fight for Patchwork. So, you're going to normal summon your dog, use its effect, adding sheep. Then you'll activate Patchwork and add Edgem Chain and Poly. Patchwork go to the grave. Then you'll summon your sheep to controlling a Fluffal. Use its second effect, Bouncing Dog, to summon Chain. Then you'll link Chain and Sheep away. In order to summon Cross Sheep, this will trigger Edgem Chain's effect in order to add Fright for Fusion. Then you'll activate the Fright for Fusion, banishing the Edgem Chain and the sheep in order to summon Fright for Kraken. You will then activate Polly, fusing with the dog and Kraken, in order to summon Sabertooth to one of Cross Sheep's zones. And then you'll go Chainlink 1 Sabertooth and Chainlink 2 Cross Sheep. Cross Sheep will revive the dog, and then Kraken will Sabertooth will revive the Kraken. And then now you have 10,400 damage. And I should have mentioned that you can send a monster your opponent controls, if they had one, while you had the Kraken up, in order to OTK easier and deal with problems. For this final combo, you'll need Fluffal Penguin and Foolish Burial Goods. This can also be Fluffal Dolphin. So, what you'll do is activate Foolish Burial Goods, sending Toy Vendor. Toy Vendor will activate in order to add the Dolphin. Then you'll normal summon your Penguin, use its effect, summoning the Dolphin. Then you'll activate Dolphin's effect, resetting the vendor in order to send a Fluffal Wings from the deck to the grave. Next, you'll overlay your Penguin and Dolphin in order to summon Bahamut Shark. Use Shark's effect, detaching specifically Dolphin, and I'll get into why once I finish, to summon Totally Awesome before 5 summons. You'll then flip up your Toy Vendor, activate Wings and Grave, banishing it and the Dolphin, so that you can draw 2, and then send the Toy Vendor. And then Toy Vendor will trigger, adding something like a dog. So, the reason why you detach Dolphin and not Penguin is because you don't want your Penguin out of rotation. You usually want that stuff in the graveyard, in your hand, stuff like that. So, banishing the Dolphin here, just, you know, it makes sure that you'll have a Penguin in order to summon off of Cross Sheep. Penguin to summon off Cross Sheep, I should say. Alright guys, that's going to do it for today's video. I'm sorry that the test hands won't be in this, however they'll be coming out this week, so you don't have to wait long for that. It's just an issue with file size. I hope you enjoyed the deck profile. If you did, make sure to like and subscribe. I will have more content coming out soon for decks like Virtual World and DDD, so maybe you can sound off in the comments which one you'd like to see first. I have a lot of ideas for Virtual World and different techs, and DDD is just a very unique deck in itself, so if you're interested in either of those decks, let me know. That's going to do it for today's video, and I will see you in the next one. Bye bye.